I got to get off
Okay.
the work VPN.
Oh yeah. Good idea. Okay, so while you're doing that, I'm gonna uh usually, do a hot topic, not hot topic, a icebreaker question.
Do it.
So, we're doing would you rather. This is like my
Oh
new
yeah.
favorite app.
Okay.
Would you rather always wear earmuffs or always wear a nose plug?
Earmuffs or no?
Yeah. I was
I
like,
think
I'd
that's
definitely go for earmuffs.
same. Like
I don't want anything in my nose.
wouldn't breathe. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
pretty much wear these headphones
Yes.
24/7, it sounds like. So like I just pretty natural to me.
Yeah.
Although I'm a
Well,
very like hot-bodied person, so earmuffs would definitely like keep me warm.
I also don't wanna be forced to breathe out of my mouth for the rest of my life, like, that's no
Yep.
good.
Yep.
And, let's talk about, like, COVID. That's not a nose plug, but that's annoying.
Yeah.
Okay. Would you rather be the lone survivor of a bank hostage situation or get stuck in an elevator on your own for 53 hours? I'm gonna say stuck in an elevator. If I was in a
Did
hostage
they kill
situation,
anybody?
that would be
Did
the
they
lone
kill anybody?
survivor. Well, like, everybody else
Oh,
dies
okay,
except for
everybody's
you.
dead.
I'm like, "No."
No, yeah, the elevator thing would be way easier to handle.
Well, long term, it would suck in
Long
the
term,
minute.
yeah.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
the moment. Oh my goodness, so when you tap on the answers, it tells you the percentage. 63% of people said they'd rather survive a bank hostage
I
situation.
mean, I guess you've got a story to tell if you have the wherewithal to tell it, but
No. Well, and I just have so much survivor guilt.
mhm.
I can't do that.
Yeah. How do you sleep at night?
Okay. Would you rather never eat sweets again or never eat chocolate again?
What's the difference between sweets? Isn't chocolate a sweet?
I guess that's like fruit. I would rather never eat sweets again. Like, chocolate is my dessert. That's what I want.
Are they trying to pit, like, fruity candy against
Mhm.
chocolate candy?
Yeah, or I'd say, like, even, like, pastries or pies or cakes. I'm not a cake fan.
No, yeah, I could probably live without cupcakes and cake and all that kinda stuff and donuts, like, I don't really care,
Yeah.
but, like, a little, like, Heath bar or, like,
Yes.
Twix or something, that's what I
Yes.
need.
Okay. Um, okay, here's another one. Would you rather see blurry all the time or see everything in black and white? I'd rather see everything in black and white.
I don't know, I mean, I went through this whole, like, being almost blind situation before I got
Really?
LASIK, I was really bad. Um,
Oh, you had
it's not the
Henry had
end of the
LASIK.
world, I guess, but color's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think I might go
Well,
blurry.
I guess if you could do glasses,
I
that'd
mean,
be
I
fun.
would assume the answer is no on the glasses, it's not that's breaking the terms and conditions here.
Okay, so 68% of people said that they would rather see everything in black and white.
Okay.
Okay, would you rather sue a charity organization and win or
Oh,
sue a corrupt organization and lose? Both sound
I
terrible.
I mean, I'd rather sue a corrupt organization and lose. Why are you trying to take from a charity organization?
I
I
know.
mean, do you have a
Well,
valid case? I mean, if somebody's there doing
I guess
something
if you're
wrong,
suing,
then I'd rather I mean, if you're
wanna
suing for the
win.
right reasons, then I'd rather, like,
Mhm.
get the bad guy if somebody's in a charity organization doing something bad and win that
Mm.
case.
57% of people said they'd rather sue a charity.
Yeah.
Oh, and now I got an ad, so maybe that's a good time to So,
Uh,
if anybody's interested, it is the Would You Rather app on the, Apple Store.
I don't know about you, but I feel like some of my technology is failing me lately.
Mm.
My computer will not unlock with my watch anymore, and it frustrates the heck out of me.
No.
Although it's making the decision to move towards this keyboard a whole lot easier because
Well,
it's got the
we have to save
fingerprint
that.
reader.
Okay, we'll save that. I'll go ahead and start because I want to
Yeah.
hear your mouse keyboard breakdown.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me jump over, cue up the music, and I will remember our sponsor. Okay. Okay. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Compressed FM, a podcast all about web design and development with a little bit of zest. In today's episode, we have several fun topics planned, whether that's acing a job interview, remix versus NextJS, feature flags, or Brad's keyboard mouse breakdown. That was on purpose.
Web development and design, who would have guessed? Well, we can do them both, even add a little zest. So turn up the volume, get ready for the best. Let's get it started in this episode of Compress.
What's up, everybody? My name is Amy Dutton. I am the lead maintainer on the Redwood.js core team.
Hey, y'all. My name is Brad Garapi. I'm a full stack developer at Atlassian working on Confluence.
And today's episode is sponsored by WorkOS. So WorkOS is perfect for getting authorization and authentication up and running quickly on your application. So I've been working on a project where I'm applying WorkOS to an Astro project, and it's pretty sweet, all the stuff that it gives you. So if you want a hosted solution, you can do all that with their AuthKit provider. And so you would just kick the user over to their hosted login form. They'll handle signup, they'll do Google Auth, GitHub, Microsoft, all the things. Just makes that whole process super easy. Or if you're a designer like me, or even if you're not, you're trying to implement some custom styling, you can use their APIs to do all of that on your end. So I just love the fact that you have the flexibility to do both, and whatever you're trying to do within your application, it supports all those features. So special thanks to WorkOS for sponsoring, and I just encourage anybody to go check it out. So you can go to workos.com or go to authkit.com to see their individual packages. Okay, so Brad has spent a lot of money. How many keyboards did you buy?
I only bought one keyboard, but I bought like
Oh.
8 mice.
Okay, so I'm surprised you didn't buy more keyboards.
No, because I was like, the keyboard was just like, hey, if I'm considering an Apple trackpad, maybe I should just consider the Apple keyboard as well.
Okay, so where did you land?
Okay, so after purchasing 8 mice, I am left with 0 mice. I got rid of them all. I didn't like any
Trackpad.
of them. I wound up on the trackpad.
Yes, and it's black.
Oh
Super
yeah,
sweet.
it's got to match like the desk. So this is the
Yes.
black one, the space
Okay.
gray, whatever the heck they call it. And then I still really do like my custom keyboard. This
Yeah.
thing, the really
Yeah, it
good
does sound good.
sounding one. But I went on vacation recently, went to upstate New York, and then when I came back, my fingers just, I guess, weren't ready for this smashing of the keys that I like to do. So I was like, well, let me just try to like main this Apple Magic keyboard. And it's been nice and light on the fingers.
Yeah.
It's also really nice for authentication, getting into the computer with the fingerprint ID sensor on
Mhm.
there, because my watch isn't working right now for some reason. And so that's my setup right now, is like all Apple. By no means am I going to get rid of this mechanical keyboard. I still love it. I have a feeling I'll switch back and forth every now and then.
Okay.
But right now, kind of easing back into it, I'm liking this Apple keyboard. However, on the mouse front, I do have an MX Master 3S coming in like a
Yes.
couple days, because it's really the form factor that I care about the most. I don't care about all the fancy buttons. I really don't need them. What I want is that really nice palm grip form factor, and everything I tried wasn't big enough for me. There were all these
Oh,
gaming mice, which was great because I love the sensors in the gaming mice, but the
mm,
size wasn't what I like.
interesting.
Gaming mice have to be like tiny and light, and I want
Oh, so
something
you
really
can go
big.
travel with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have the Apple Magic trackpad. So I have white. My desk is white, so that works there. And then I have a Newfie Air 75. So you get the clickety clack.
Yeah.
Don't come back. But I also have a Magic keyboard that's a shorter version. So I don't have the full keyboard. It does not have the finger, which sounds like it would be nice for
Yeah, like
stuff.
ideally, I would take this keyboard, chop off the 10 key, and just make it a
Mhm.
TKL, a 10 keyless, and that would be perfect because it
Yeah.
feels really wide on the desk in comparison to my other keyboard.
Yeah.
Um, the one thing about that Newfie that you have is I don't love how they take the arrow keys and kind
Mhm.
of like scoop them up underneath some other keys.
Under the return.
Yeah, like I like it when it's kind of in its own separate block. You know what I mean?
Mm. That doesn't bother me as much. What's given me, grief and trying to feel is the delete and the backspace.
Oh, they're small.
So,
Yeah.
well, this is just kind of off to the side, and then these keys are real like, this keyboard you can use on a Mac or a Windows, so there's a
Hmm.
few keys that are, like, more Windows keys, like, I never use page up, page down, and actually, that throws me off sometimes when I accidentally hit these and all of a sudden, like, if I'm on a web browser, it'll jump, or even if I'm in VS Code, I'm like, "Whoa, my code just disappeared." So I'm not too crazy about that. There's also this weird, like, fire key. I don't know if my
Is
camera
it like a hyper or like
I don't even know what it does. I'm like, I can't figure that out.
oh,
So
it's next to page up and page down. Is it home or end?
no,
I
I
mean,
have
is
a
it
home
like
and an end key down here.
oh,
So I don't
interesting.
know what that one is. And there's a little scissors. I don't know if that's like on a PC, there's an actual screenshot button. I don't know if it does that. I
Oh,
just
yes,
don't
there
use
is a
it.
print screen button. Yes.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. I don't know. So the other weird thing is that I've worked around this. There's not an FN key down here. So if you're trying to do function stuff on the right or sorry, on the left side, there's not a function key. You have to use the one over here on the left, wherever that is. So the
Whoa.
only thing that messes me up with that is if I'm switching back and forth between my keyboard and my laptop, it throws me off a little bit, but I have Keyboard Maestro on my computer, and so I've actually set up hotkeys so that the placement's still the same regardless of what keyboard I'm using.
So on the Magic Keyboard, the function key is up near those page up and page down
Oh,
buttons, and that's something that
what?
I have to get used to,
That's weird.
because these are all the function keys are hidden behind that function modifier, which I kinda
Oh,
like the mechanical that I have because they have a dedicated function row, and
oh,
I never
interesting.
I never use all these other ones, like the volume up and down and play pause and
Mm.
stuff. I never use those, so
My Magic Keyboard I'll travel with. I like having that when I'm traveling, and really the reason that I travel with a keyboard, if I travel with a keyboard, is I have a rooster stand. I think I picked
mhm.
this, like, um early days, compressed. This is my pick and plug, but it's just the collapses, and I can stick this in like the water bottle pocket on my computer. But this is great because it'll pop out. Let me see if I can demonstrate for people that are watching. So it folds out and you can put your keyboard on top. So if I'm working in a hotel room, I like to use this so I'm not hunched over my computer. It makes my neck and my back start to hurt, especially if I have to put in, say, a full day of work on the road. And so if this is elevating my laptop, then I need to have a keyboard and a mouse on the desk. So,
Yeah. Yeah, going all Mac has made a lot of decisions a little bit more streamlined for me just because Apple tends to have the best products that work best with their lineups. But there's still something about those clicky keyboards that I really like.
well, so let's camp out here for a second. I'm fascinated by the fact that you use like you're all in on Apple reminders and Apple Notes.
Yes.
Do you have like hacks for using those?
None.
Okay.
I'm like, I've just decided that I'm gonna stop working on my productivity system and
Mhm.
just use it. Sure, I use some templates, I use lists, I use tags, like all the different ways to kind of categorize things, but I don't like write any automations or do anything crazy like that. And
Okay.
I think my favorite feature though is that they're accessible literally anywhere. I can just yell in my house at Siri to tell me to do something later or at a given place or on a given date, and it just hooks right into that system. And so whether it's my computer, my cell phone, or all the voice control stuff, I have access to all that. That was the real winner, is like why I really, really wanted to use that system. It's the best integrated.
And I think Siri's gotten better, by the way.
I mean, it's going to have AI soon.
Right. I just mean it's done a better job of understanding me and picking up my voice.
Yes.
So I didn't realize like not everybody has this feature turned on, but I have mine so it only knows my voice. So if my kids are like, "Hey Siri," it doesn't do
Yes.
anything.
Yes.
But not everybody. Oh, and she's wanting to know what I have to say. But not everybody has that feature turned on, which I'm
I
like,
feel like it's the
why?
best way to go, especially if you've got, your partner, your spouse, your significant other, also on Apple, and
Yep.
if you're both trying to talk to Siri, it'll know who's talking and add it to the right phone, the right calendar, the right list. And this has just made sharing things so much better with,
Mm,
you know, between me and Gabby. We've got shared calendars, shared photo albums, shared reminder lists that we can kind of
mhm.
like assign to each other. It's really, really helpful.
Yeah, we also recently turned on like the family sharing, and that was mainly because Henry needed access to like all the movies had been bought on my account, and he
Mm,
was trying to access some stuff or
yeah.
books and things like that. You can share all that. Um,
Yes, and
so oh, go
Jordan
ahead.
in the comments,
Mm.
is speaking the truth. So the one thing that kind of glues a lot of this together is Raycast, so that I don't necessarily have to, do much. It's really all at your fingertips in the Raycast toolbar to you can look at your reminders, create reminders, um,
Oh, that's
you can
nice. I
also
didn't know
see
you
your
could do that.
schedule, join meetings from Raycast. So it's Raycast is kind of like where it all rolls up into, but you're using the native Apple like systems so that it's good for sharing, it's good for Siri access, things like that.
The one thing that I can't shake, and I don't know if you have a good system for this. So most of my stuff is in Notion, and I love the fact that I have all of my project documentation,
Yeah.
any assets, I have tasks for every single project. All of that is in Notion. And if I need to share with somebody, I just share the whole page and they have access to everything for that particular project. So found that to be really helpful. And I love the fact that it's all in one place. So that's the only thing that makes me nervous about moving over to notes or reminders is the fact that it's no longer all in one place and it's shared across multiple like applications.
Yeah, so the non-Apple things that I use, I guess let's get into that. So
Mhm.
Raycast, easy choice. It's a better spotlight. Go get it. Notion.
Done.
Yes, I do still use Notion. I Notes are too simple and all your sharing stuff is going to be very Apple based. What if you're sharing with somebody who doesn't have Apple? What if you don't know what system they're using? Notion is a better place to put more complicated data, things that need templates, things that need databases, a little bit of relations. I put my complex stuff there. Notes are more for like, for instance, every time I fix something in the house, I make a note for it, I categorize it, and so that if anything ever breaks again, I know exactly how to fix it. So we're talking like dishwashers or things like that. So I've got a ton of notes just for like keeping lists, jotting down thoughts. But Notion is for the complex stuff. And then same kind of goes for like Google Drive. I am using um, Apple's like iCloud storage for some files and things. But that's kind of just the stuff for me, the stuff that I care about. If it needs to be shared with anybody else, like all these videos I'm doing for Cloudinary, it's going on Google Drive. I just feel like it's more accessible, more like cross platform, and you can share a link really easily.
Do you do anything with Dropbox?
No, always been Google
Interesting.
Drive. Never really used Dropbox.
Interesting. So I have all of my files are in Dropbox,
Mm.
and I do love their sharing interface a lot better than
Mm.
Google Drive. So I'm curious how that matches up on a price standpoint, but it is nice the fact that I'm sure you could do this with Google Drive. I have access to all my files, all my folders on the road. Like I
Uh,
was traveling this weekend, and so somebody's asking me about a photo, and I just was able to pull it up on my phone because I knew it was on my computer. So I love that backup system using
yeah, I
Dropbox.
need to get better about backup systems. Right now, my backup system is like pretty much iCloud at this point. I need to
Oh,
get
really?
like an external hard drive with Time Machine going. That's bitten me like long, long ago when Time
Mm.
Machine first came out. I was like working on one of those all-in-one white Mac computers, and it died. And then I tried to Time Machine restore, and like a bunch of things went wrong. So I'm
I
still
know.
like salty about the whole thing. I'm just like,
S
all
I
my
have
files should live like in my iCloud account, on Google Drive, on GitHub. Like I try not to keep anything on the computer.
Yeah, I have so many backups, and I didn't realize that I was this way about backups because I don't feel like I've always been this way. Like, there's still things that I'm like, "I think that file's only in one place," like,
Ooh,
old stuff, like,
yeah,
15 years ago stuff. But, for my backups, I have basically all of my files on Dropbox. I do use GitHub and things like that, and then I've picked this before as well. So I have this is the case with 2 SanDisks, which I know last time I picked this, people are like, "These are faulty." They can be faulty. I've never had any issues with them. I would just say, again, that's why you have a backup for your backup. So, one of these is a carbon copy of my
yeah,
laptop, which
yeah.
I haven't run it in a while, to be honest. The other one, the one with the cord coming out, is a Time Machine. And then I also have a NAS drive, so I'll archive files there that has like tons of terabytes. So
Yeah.
if podcast has huge files, if I'm doing any video files, those are huge. So those all go on my NAS drive. And then I also use Backblaze for both my laptop and the NAS drive. Backblaze has a B2 option, which is great for the NAS. It's a more long-term storage, but then it's constantly just updating or backing up my computer. So I have on-site backup as well as cloud backup. So I have like
I I
3
guess
backups.
my strategy is different. I think I'd rather store all of my settings in the cloud with that particular
Mm.
provider. Like all my computer settings are backed up to Apple's iCloud. All of my Raycast settings are backed up to Raycast, right? All these things. Um, and then if my computer were to like completely light on fire and I need to restart it,
That's so bad
I
dynamic.
have like a blog post detailing exactly how I recreate the setup, and then I have like an in progress like automated script to do all of that.
Which is
So
amazing.
I'm more of like like I don't want necessarily a copy of my machine. There could be cruft there that I don't care about. What I
Mhm.
do care about is like these apps, these settings, tune it like this. And then if I can recreate that by like pressing a button, running a script, I want to start from zero and then get
Yep.
there. I was always the kind of person who like when I get a new computer, clean install everything. I don't like take the copy of the old computer. So that I'm all about like recreating the previous setup.
Yeah, I do that when I have a new computer. The only thing that I really copy over is Dropbox stuff, and this last time that built up a new computer was the first time that I had everything on Dropbox. So I was like, "Oh, this will be super
Yeah.
simple. I
Yeah.
just connect it, and then I have all my files that I
Yeah.
want." There were so many files, it took a week to download everything that I needed. Just because Dropbox throttles that stuff, it's slow.
Oh, you don't, like, pick and
There's
choose, like, they live on Dropbox
you
and you're
can't
just like, "I only
you
want
can
some of this stuff right now?"
you can, but, like, all my project files or certain assets, I was like, "Just give me all this stuff." And it
Oh,
it took a while for everything to sync. So,
wow.
at that point, the carbon copy clone was really helpful because I was just carrying that around
Right.
until I could get the files all downloaded from Dropbox, but, even then, that created headaches because it was like, "Oh goodness, which is the most updated file?" So,
Yeah.
after a week, it was great, and I loved it, but it just wasn't quite as seamless as I expected it to be.
I'm living in a dangerous spot right now because I only have 1 computer. The PC is gone. I'm living on
What?
my work computer, and I need to go, like, buy another Mac or do
Mm,
something, like, I
mhm.
don't know. It's not a good place to be, and I'm just wondering, like, how long can I get away with it or not?
Yeah. When I was at Zeal, I had everything on my work computer, and then I
Mhm.
had to send it back when I left, and I was
Yeah.
like, "I'm not doing this again." It really bothered me that I didn't have it as a backup,
Yeah.
and I had to send it off or, like, wipe it to send it off. That was incredibly scary. So
And I
I was
think
like
that's another reason why I'm like, put everything in the cloud. Like the things that I care about get stored in version control or here or there, never on the machine. And it always would feel weird to like take that machine and like copy files off of it.
mhm.
It feels weird. Um,
Well, I mean, is there a situation where Atlassian could potentially lock you out of your computer?
I, sure, probably. I mean, it's at will
It's
employment
so
in Texas.
scary.
So,
It's so
yeah,
scary. Uh Oh, good times. Okay,
yeah,
so we've talked about all the things that we didn't say we were gonna talk about.
yeah, right.
Um,
None of this
so
is in the title. Bonus material.
we can adjust the title when it goes live after the fact. So I did want to talk a little bit about job interview stuff. And the reason is, I mean, I feel like or I know several people right now that are interviewing for jobs. The way tech is, there are still a lot of people that are looking for jobs. And so just talking about what does that process look like when you're looking for a job. Now, I've been in kind of a weird place. In the sense that I've been very fortunate and all the jobs that I've had so far basically landed in my lap. And I try and say that
Lucky, lucky.
very carefully, because I know that's definitely not the case. Like, my resume is a resume that has been just for formal purposes only. I've gotten the job and it's like, "Oh, hey, by the way, we need to have your resume on file. Will you send it over?"
Hmm.
So it's not been I have a resume or a CV trying to get people to look at me or state my accomplishments or things like that. It's just a matter of formality. So that's been something that, like, I think I've seen people, doing resume reviews, and some of the points that are made there are incredibly interesting. That I'm like, huh, my resume doesn't have that.
Yeah. Number one, it's always good to review your resume. I do that every 6 months. I've got a reminder. It goes off. I update it with the latest stuff. And then once a year, my goal is to always take an interview. Doesn't matter my happiness level at my current job. I always take at least one interview to just feel out what the landscape is like, figure out if anything has changed in the interview process. It's always good to stay sharp. Um, but I have noticed, and maybe this is just like because I've done it recently. Um, I felt like everybody was changing jobs back in like COVID times, back in like
Mhm.
2020. I feel like people were just moving around so easily, trying out new companies. Everything was
Yep.
remote. People were just like evaluating options. And now I feel like after the recent rounds of layoffs, it's happening again. And
Mhm.
maybe just because that's my lived experience, but it just feels like, oh, there's a lot of people looking for jobs right now.
Mhm. Well, I
And
definitely feel like more people are hiring.
more, yes, I've noticed that there are definitely more spots open than there were previously, but I gotta say there's more developers looking to fill those positions. And I
Mhm.
posted a little short on Twitter about this recently, and it's like these companies are lining up tons of interviews, and they're not giving it to the first person who completes the interview process. They're not like, "Oh, you're good enough, we're gonna let you in." The way that I'm feeling is like they're getting multiple people through the interview process and not just evaluating them on an individual basis, they're
Mm.
actually comparing to other candidates. And so you being good enough isn't a ticket to entry. You know what I mean? You have to you have to kind of start beating out your peers in a sense.
Yeah.
And it's tough
One
because
of
these
the
layoffs all came from big, good companies. So there's really skilled people out there.
Yeah. So I'm just curious, for somebody that is interviewing for a job. I recently did well, I know there's multiple types of questions that they ask. So they'll ask technical questions about what you know. A lot of companies, they have homework where you have to solve
Mm.
coding problems. And then there's also these soft questions. So I went down a rabbit hole the other day just looking at soft questions because they're they're soft, they're hard to answer when a company is like, "Tell me about your weaknesses." It's like, what other context do you have that conversation? Like, I've never asked "Brad, tell me about your weaknesses."
Oh, here we go.
I know, right? So it's like, how do you answer that when you're trying to come across as
Yeah.
intelligent and competent and capable, and they wanna talk about all the things that you're bad at?
Well, this in particular is a really good one because you should come this was the one question that I kind of brainstormed before that kind of behavioral interview because it's challenging. I actually 3 years ago I interviewed with Stripe and Stripe kept notes on all the feedback and as did I. And what they aligned with, what they had to say was like weaknesses weren't like, I came across as too self-assured, I guess, which
Mm,
I'm a confident person, I feel like, and I think that's probably a good trait to have overall, but what they wanna know is they're looking for this signal that, like, you don't think you know it all, and you
mhm.
know that there's always room for improvement.
Yeah.
I mean, in a
And just like
sense
self-awareness too,
yeah,
like
self-awareness,
this
yeah.
isn't I recognize is an area for growth for me.
Yeah, and so, like, come with a few prepared, and, like, if I were to do this now, I think to myself, I've worked on a lot of greenfield projects lately, and so having to give a really crisp timelines isn't really an
Mm,
issue. Having to estimate really well isn't really an issue because when you're starting from 0, you're just incrementally delivering value so often. You don't have to say, like, "I'm doing this one feature, and I think it'll take 3 weeks," because, like, we're a steadily moving ship and, we have to plan these things out. No, it's just go, go, go. So,
mhm,
that was one of the things I was kinda trying to say is, like, get better at estimating, get better at kind of pre-planning all the work that needs to get done. There's always room for improvement in communication to like peers and managers about exactly where you're at in a process. And anytime they ask a question, you should be able to like have an answer and back it up with data. So there's always room for improvement there.
yeah,
And so yeah, my tip there is like come prepared for that particular question because it's a tough one to answer on the
mhm,
spot.
yeah. The other thing that I think that they're also looking for is how do you plan to address that? What are things that you've put in
Mhm.
place so that your weakness isn't like detrimental to the project? So, for example, one of the things that I had I was thinking about is sometimes I struggle with delegating. It's like I have a preference for how I want things to be done, and so I have trouble asking for help sometimes, especially when I'm like, I feel like I could do a really good job with this particular piece. So, but when one of the things that I've learned that especially if I'm working with a junior, it's an opportunity to really teach them and provide feedback to them and invest in them. Because if I
You
do
you
take
can
the
mold
time.
them in your own shape.
Yeah, yeah, but I mean also if you take let's take podcast editing for example. That's a task that I've delegated out, and anytime I've started working with a new editor, it does not go smoothly the first couple of episodes, and I'm like, "Why did I delegate this? I could do this so much faster than trying to listen through this and provide feedback. Just do it." But the thing is, I know if I take the time to help them understand where I see room for improvement, that means that the next 2 episodes are gonna be incrementally better, and maybe by the 5th one, it's rock solid. Where as if I just take the project and put it back on my plate, that's gonna take a ton more time overall than if I just delegated it to begin with.
Yeah.
The the other thing that I was thinking about too is if I'm working with somebody that has the same amount of experience that I do, and I'm like, "Oh, well, do I delegate? Do I ask to collaborate on this?" I think, another talking point there is talking to that person, having a discussion about how their process might be different than mine, and trying to find ways to improve my own process. So it's not just dictating to them, this is how it should be done,
Right.
but also looking at it as an opportunity for growth.
Yeah, those situations are always more interesting because now you're having a conversation with somebody of equal experience
Yep.
or equal level. And so it's not just I tell you how to do it. It's
Yep.
how do we come to a conclusion even if we're butting heads?
Right.
And programming is interesting because normally it's a trade-off. It's normally you're kind of picking A or B. It's hard to find a middle, but you have to find a way to like either disagree and commit or, you can run a test, which is a good segue into something we want to talk about later in feature flags and A/B testing. You could like do it one way, look at performance or try to measure it with some kind of number so that it's an objective decision rather than a subjective decision.
Yep. So you kind of touched on this a little bit. That's another soft question that you'll hear is a time when you disagreed with somebody.
Mhm.
And an interviewer in that case is really looking for how you resolve conflict and trying to figure those things out when you're talking about working collaboratively with someone. What can they expect? Because I mean, a lot of the interview process is about reducing risk. How can I know what to if I hire this person, how do I know what to expect and what issues might come up and how we can address them? So, when I was thinking about, okay, when's a time that I disagreed with somebody, I realized that a lot of the times when we disagree with people, it's related to our own and their own worries and fears about a particular project. I'm worried about a subset of issues as well as they are. And so again, a lot of that just comes down to being willing to have a discussion with somebody and instead of trying to avoid the conversation altogether.
Yeah, conflict in that way can be hard, and you'll see company culture affects this a lot.
Mhm.
In some companies, it's kind of like the loudest person or the most experienced person always makes the decisions. In other companies, they're more data driven, where it's like you have to show me a metric or some graph that tells me why. Um, so like use company culture to try to gauge those
Mhm.
conversations as well.
That's good. How much research do you do about for a company before you interview?
I try to do a lot. So there are two websites that I always go to, levels.fyi and I think it's called teamblind.com. The
Okay.
app is called Blind. Levels is all about kind of salaries, position,
Interesting.
like salaries, different engineering positions, RSUs, like all the compensation and benefits. And then Blind is a lot more about like reviews, what employees think about that company. So I always try to read both. And typically, if people are on those websites, they are kind of being negative. So like,
Mhm.
just try to find patterns in what people are saying. Um, and a lot of times I find surprises there.
Mm.
Even I always look at it for my current company to try to understand what people think about it and if my experience is different than what people are saying. And then I try to compare that to the company I want to move to and compare and contrast the two. Because a lot of times you'll find that like, wow, my current experience at my company that I'm thinking about leaving isn't as positive or negative as what they're saying on Blind, because you might be in a different pocket of the company or in a different situation. You're leaving for your own reasons. Um, so it's good to know like what the general outlook is.
That's really good. I've never heard of those sites, so
Oh, yeah, gotta get those in
making
the
the
links
notes.
here.
Yeah, do it. Sweet. So, I'm sure when you're looking for a job, you're also considering the tech stack that you're gonna be working with because it's a huge part of the developer experience. And I know, Brad, you are all about some remix.
100%. Yeah. And that's another reason why I like greenfield projects too. When people say greenfield project it's early, you'd have a lot of say in the architecture. I'm like, ooh, like I know what I want to do. Um,
And you convinced your whole team at Atlassian to use Remix, right?
well, yeah, but the unfortunate thing is like front end developers keep leaving, and so it's a lot of times it's just me. So I'm
Oh,
contributing how I'm comfortable.
okay. Well, and probably where you're the most productive as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So, our co-host Becca is out today, but she's currently considering a project transition, I guess. So she has a project on. Oh snap! I can't even remember.
It's currently remix.
Is it Remix or is it 11D?
She said it was remix.
Oh, and so she has a project on Remix. Is considering, or no, the person that she's collaborating with has suggested Next, and she was curious what is the best framework. Now, the unfortunate side of it, since she's not here, we can't talk about the business use cases because that really, I think, drives a lot of those decisions. But Brad and I thought it would be interesting to talk about some of the pros and cons with all the different, well, specifically Remix and Next.js, but I might throw in a couple other frameworks.
Hold on, I'm just
Oh,
confirming that this is remix real quick.
that was 11D.
This looks a lot like remix based on the network tab.
Pause. Behind the
Pause.
scenes. Uh, oh, it is a
Yeah,
remix
yeah,
site.
this is
You're right.
remix for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Oh, talking
so
in Discord.
resuming, yeah, so it's currently a remix site, and somebody was proposing the idea to move to Next.js. And if you're not familiar with virtual coffee, it's kind of like a website that facilitates like an online tech community. And so here, I'll drop the link here so you can check it out. And based on what I'm seeing, it's like it's mostly a fairly static website. So like all the cool interactive stuff isn't really gonna come into play. Um, Remix and Next are both like super capable, but what Becca had top of mind was like contributing. And if you ask me right now, Next has too many decisions to make if you want to contribute or if you want to even migrate to it. Are you going to use the Pages router or are you going to use the app router? Are you going to start making use of like RSCs and suspense and all this streaming stuff? Or are you just going to like statically render the website? And so I actually think that if you're already on Remix, it's an easy path to, continue to upgrade. She said it was fairly out of date. So, okay, moving to Vite on Remix is very easy. Um, and then I also think the Remix mental model is simpler for developers to contribute to. There's a hunk of JSX, which is what you render. There's a loader, which is where you make your fetch requests to get your data. And that's for a site like this, it's probably the only two areas you're going to have to touch. So, my opinion is that like Remix is still super capable, just as capable as Next. If you don't have to switch frameworks, don't do it. And I think Next is in a weird spot right now where there's a lot of churn, and I think it would make contributing, especially for maybe first time contributors, more difficult than need be.
Yeah.
That's my take.
Yeah. No, I agree with you in terms of Next.js. And I understand there are pros and cons when you're trying to migrate a project off of a given framework. I would say if she does want to get off Remix, if she's not happy and some of it's just not understanding the use cases, then I'd probably consider Astro.
Yep.
And Astro is just really great for content sites. And actually, when they started, they said they were specifically for content sites. If you wanted to create a or application or SaaS, they were encouraging you to look at other frameworks, which I thought was interesting. Most frameworks won't do that. They'll be like, oh, well, we could figure it out, or they'll give you a soft answer. But Astro is very clear in saying we are content sites. We're best suited for content sites. And so I love the fact that Astro supports Markdown out of the box. It makes it really easy to use layouts and things like that. So, and of course, co-host James has an entire course on Astro. He has a YouTube video. So if you want to check that out, I encourage you to look at the resources that he's provided. But it's so cool, just all the options that we have available at our disposal.
And at the end of the day, I don't actually know the reason for migrating because that's kind of important to understand. Like, why was this being considered in the first place?
Yep.
You know, don't fall into that dangerous pattern of looking at a new shiny thing and saying, "Oh, what if we migrated to that?" It may not give you any benefits. She did mention like wanting to have a true membership portal and accounts, and Astro can do it, Remix can do it, Next can do it. You can server render using user profiles and all that stuff. There's James's Astro course linked in the
Perfect.
comments there.
Amalite in the chat did ask about backend pieces with Golang. I really have no experience with that. The closest I've come to backend stuff is probably using Laravel if it's not JavaScript. So that's using PHP. When I was at Zeal, it was a consultancy. Most of our projects were in Rails. I didn't do a lot with Rails. I just knew enough there to be dangerous. Most of the stuff that I did was all front end. But we did, if you go to YouTube, you can check out the interview that we did with Aaron Francis. He is, I guess, a contributor. Is he creates educational material on Laravel.
Yeah.
And he has some great content there. So you can check out that interview and check out his YouTube channel.
From what I understand, Rust is a little bit more lower level than Go, although Rust type system is more similar to TypeScript than Go's type system. But yeah, I've just heard that Go is easier to get into than Rust for a backend language. I also see nothing wrong with running TypeScript on the backend. So that's my preference, just because you maintain consistency with what you're doing on the front end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said of doing JavaScript front to back. All that stuff is just really easy when you're talking about having to pass stuff off to the server or hand things off to the client. You're not having to translate it.
Yeah, and it feels like you're doing like double the work everywhere. Like you're redefining types, you're re-implementing a bunch of utility methods, all of your validation library. If you're using TypeScript up and down the stack, can be shared front to back, which is really cool.
Yep.
I just think like that is the way to go at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
Mm-hmm.
which always leads us to that topic of discussion. Where's the Laravel for JavaScript so that we can get the back end and have it integrated with the front end,
Yeah. In that case, do Redwood. We're working on it. Ish,
Yeah.
ish. So actually, we're having a town hall tomorrow. So if you are listening to this in the future, you can go check this out on the Redwood YouTube channel. But one of our core team members, Rob, just built an entire jobs feature for Redwood. So if you are trying to do jobs, want queues and things like that, go check out Redwood. It's now part of the framework.
Nice. Oh, good. Jordan is confirming this. It's nice to have a single language for less context switching. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And what's funny is Aaron Francis had a different point of view. He's like different
Mm-hmm.
language, different frame of mind. You're running in a different
Different
environment.
location. Yep.
He wants to have that separation. And like, cool. Everybody is so different in that regard. The closer that I come to writing like a single thing, like I just want like one blob of code to do it all. And I guess this is what React server components will eventually get us to. Is like you're writing one piece of code and it is technically run everywhere, meaning run on the server and on the client. Kind of a
Yep.
weird paradigm to wrap your head around right now.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I feel like a lot of the paradigms shifting for me has to do with the life cycle of the data.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about hydration, what's the first view that somebody sees? How does that fill in as they continue to use the site or as state changes?
Yeah.
And then as forms are submitted, what's that path look like? Does the entire page have to refresh? What information are you passing back to the front end? And that back and forth is really interesting. That makes that whole problem a little bit harder to solve than just, oh, here's information from the server. I'm going to hand that off. That's a piece of it, but it's not the whole picture.
Yeah. And it what's weird is like WebSockets kind of accomplish some of this too, but that's like all client side stuff. Um, but it's like that, like, oh, the server's doing something and then it's passing it on down to the client. But that's kind of like a one-way thing. I guess it's
Hmm.
two-way when it comes to like React server components.
Yeah. So if you're creating all these features within your application, we've talked about all these different elements and things like that. What is the way that you specify that this is a new feature you can, or not necessarily, you don't have to activate it within your project?
Yeah, good segue. So I've been doing a lot of feature flag work at Atlassian lately, and that's exactly how you kind of like dynamically show and hide features or change code paths based on, essentially a Boolean value. I always joke that like feature flag companies are Booleans as a service because that's pretty much like the gist of what it is. But it's so much more than that. Like true or false is just the entry point. You can be as simple as that. The
I'm gonna
idea is
make
like,
Oh,
go ahead.
sorry. I want to make some joke. Like, if that is their Booleans as a service, just be like, it's all bull, or that
It's
doesn't
all bull.
quite, but I'm like, that'd be the perfect tagline.
Yeah. So and somebody should just embrace that. Like, haha,
Yeah.
we offer Booleans as a service.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like feature flags can start out really simple, where it's just like it's essentially an object with a string as a name and a boolean as the value, and your code, whether it's server rendered or client rendered, reaches out to the feature flag service, requests a feature flag, and then does either A or B depending on the value of the flag. And it's really good to like launch things before they're ready. Um, And then what's interesting about feature flagging is that you can expose them to like certain users or certain environments. Hey, if you're in development, turn this feature flag on. Or hey, if the user is me in production, turn the feature flag on just for me. And so that's called segmentation, where you can write a bunch of really complex rules based on really anything that your app can send to the feature flag service to help determine if that value is true or false. Amy, have you ever had to like use any of this stuff or write any of this stuff?
No, we are using it at Redwood. So I do know that they have feature flags. And when I was doing some work at Zeal, one of our clients was Freedom Financial. They were using Launch Darkly to accomplish a lot of this.
Mhm.
Is that, do you use a service like Launch Darkly?
Atlassian was using Launch Darkly. We're migrating to another service called StatSig. Both of these are like,
Interesting.
products you can sign up for.
Sure.
There was some problem with Launch Darkly at some point, like the service went
Interesting.
down, and then our like Redis cache of all the flags like blew up. It was
Ooh.
a crazy problem. Feature flagging is really interesting because what happens if the service is down?
Yeah.
and
What
and
gets
you've got
found?
some flags true and some flags false. What happens? So a lot of it comes down to like caching the flag layer, but also like setting default values in your code
Mm.
so that you've kind of like committed the true value if something were to go wrong in the back end.
Another service I really wanna experiment with is Posthog because they also
Offer
offer
feature flags,
feature
yeah,
flags, and a whole bunch of other services too.
yeah. Postdoc is also analytics, right?
Yeah, and I think they also, I mean, this is part of analytics, but have A/B testing,
Yeah,
which is also really interesting.
yeah. So a lot of other things that are kind of built on the baseline of feature flags is so segmentation, being able to like take a particular user session and like, kind of dynamically determine if they're going to get a certain feature or not. A B testing is a more like kind of an advanced version of feature flags where you turn on the flag for one segment of users and you don't turn on the flag for the other segment of users and you compare the two. Um, and to kind of like determine which one performs better by some given metric. And then, even further on down the line is, like, things like progressive rollouts. Let's say I wanna turn on a feature flag, but I don't wanna turn it on for everybody all at once. I wanna slowly roll it out, and then you just kind of, monitor all of your errors in something like Sentry and look at all your exceptions, because if you turn it on for 1% of your users and that's like 100,000 people or something crazy, you'll see a big spike in errors if there was some major problem in the service. And that way, only a subset of people experience the error, but you got a strong enough signal to know that something was wrong.
Oh, interesting. So Posthog does also have a session replay, so I guess that's where that
Ooh,
comes into effect if you do have that error, being able to replay that session and really diagnose what the problem or the bug is.
nice. Yeah, and the whole purpose of this is that like people can continue to push new code to main and get it out there, um, without like having to wait for everything to be done in a particular feature branch. It allows for more continuous delivery, and also it gives you a remote kill switch so that you don't have to redeploy in order to turn something off if there's a
Mhm.
problem. Those are the benefits for big companies because people are breaking things all the time and they really want a way to just protect their users by flipping a switch.
Yeah, and I know at Redwood, some of our developers have created a lot of feature flags for some of the new stuff that they're doing with RC and SSR, so that if you do wanna experiment with those canaries, you can turn on that feature flag and get access, and that way we can also, deploy from main, and that doesn't end up affecting our branch strategy and how we're doing releases.
Now that's really interesting to talk about feature flags in something like a library versus
Mhm,
a product, because those library feature flags, I would assume, aren't backed by a service like Launch Darkly, Posthog, etc. I'm assuming they're just baked into the code with branching paths if you've got that config option turned on or off.
that's right.
Whereas
So
running
most of
running applications reach out to like a different service to make these decisions.
That's right. So in our case, there's a redwood.toml file included in every repo. And so I believe most of the feature flags there get triggered or saved within that config file.
Yeah. And that just goes to show you, like, you can implement feature flagging, um, in a manner that's as simple as a JSON file, a TOML file right in your repository. Now,
Mhm.
of course, that means you have to kind of deploy it in order to get that out to your users, or they can change these things dynamically. Again, all depends on if you're building a library or building an app.
Yep, for sure. If you're interested, Wes Boss recently tweeted about this, and his tweet got like 450, 500 comments on it. So it is kind of interesting to read through and just see different people's approach to solving this problem. There we go. Are you good for picks and plugs? Which I do have a pick.
Yeah, you know what? I'll pick.
Okay. So we'll I was I was trying to think how I was gonna segue. For the next segment of the show, we'll do our picks and plugs, and this is generally something that we pick that we like. Maybe it's something we bought on Amazon or something that we're excited about, and then we'll plug generally something that we've worked on. You could say we have 2 picks and 2 plugs, but, it I'll go first. So, I'm going to pick, this is a new addition to my everyday carry, and I did tease it a couple weeks ago. I bought a remarkable tablet, and I debated about this because it is expensive for what it is, especially since I have an iPad. It's like, why not just take notes on that? But I was really interested in the distraction-free journal stuff, but also the fact that, um the feeling of paper. So with an iPad, you really are writing on glass. It's hard for me to write small. I don't feel like I write too small, but it's hard to write small with on the iPad. So, and it doesn't really feel like my handwriting. I do have a paper like screen protector that I do love, but it still doesn't quite get you there. So I got the Remarkable. I watched a ton of YouTube videos just trying to make sure that this is a purchase that I wanted to make. And one of the things that you'll notice when you watch YouTube videos are people like, "Oh, this really does feel like my handwriting," or "Man, the lag is so smooth and seamless." A few things that I did notice, the handwriting does feel like yours, but if you have kids that use like the invisible markers, Brad, you know what I'm talking about? Like Crayola has these white markers that
Yep.
you can color, and then it takes just a second for your ink to show up on paper. That's what I feel like. And the more you use it, the closer, you feel like, oh, it's responding quickly. But it wasn't quite that immediate response that I was expecting, like you would with the real thing with paper and pen. But I do think it does the best job of getting you closer to what you're looking for. So I really have enjoyed using it. I've been using it, I think, almost every day for the last week or so. The nice part about it is if you don't like it, they do have a 100-day return policy. So I do have a while to decide to make sure this is something I enjoy and it's not just the latest, newest, shiniest thing in my toolkit. But if you're interested, I would just encourage you. Honestly, the best place you'll get honest feedback is if you go to Reddit and join the Remarkable subreddit, because there you're going to get people that have problems. You're going to see what those are, or people talking about features that they want to incorporate or how they're using their Remarkable tablet. So I would say check that out if you're considering it. And Jordan said, "Don't let your kids use it." Yes, I have not let them. And I'm sure what's interesting, I read somewhere the pin tip, because you do have to replace the pin tips, that this is like compressed felt, is what I read. I'm not sure if that's true, but that's why you get a different feeling than, say, the Apple Pencil, because this is more like plastic. I mean, you can replace these tips, but you do wear this down, which is kind of interesting. But my kids, I'm sure, would just be like, "Arr," and really mess up the tip if I let them play with it.
Yeah, I always thought that like the iPad form factor was kind of useless, but after the latest WWDC, some of those new features, I was like, "Ooh," but I
I
still can't justify.
I use my tablet more when I'm traveling. If I'm traveling, it's
Yeah,
like, "Oh, this is why I have it. I use this all the time."
yeah.
And because 'cause I'm on the airplane, I'm reading, or I take movies with me, or I'm at the hotel. I never turn the TV on. I just have my iPad there. But at home, sometimes I don't feel like I use it the way that I should.
And your plug?
My plug, I'm gonna plug brokencomb.dev. So if you go to brokencomb.dev, you can sign up for my newsletter. And the concept there is just talking about technology is something that you can go wide on. You can become a generalist and learn a lot of things about a lot of different topics. But as you gain experience and get further into your career, you start to go deep on topics. So that's why it's a broken comb. Now, if you're listening, I haven't sent out a newsletter yet, so you haven't missed anything, but it is in the works. So check that out, brokencomb.dev.
Nice. Okay, for me, I really like these silicone rings. I wear
Oh,
them
yeah.
all the time, and I just had one actually like go bad on me. It kind of like crinkled as I pulled it off my finger.
Oh,
But the company had like which one was it? Groove Life is the name of the company.
okay.
They had like a 90-year return policy or something, or
What?
like warranty. So I just like sent it to them, and they're like, "Yeah, here's a new one." And I got a new one, and it's black and it's cool. Come on now, this will never focus. There
There
we
you
go.
go.
It's black and it's cool, and this one was too big. I tried it on, it was a little too big. Like, fine, just keep it. We'll send you a new one that fits. I'm like,
Nice.
okay. So they're pretty generous with these things, and I really like them. I wear them all the time because like my fingers, I feel like have changed size quite a bit since I got married. I was like really skinny and didn't lift weights back then, so I'm a little bit bigger now. Um, and so yeah, I've got like 30 of these, and a different color for like every day of the week, pretty much. So,
Wow.
and I wear the black one pretty much all the time, but
Okay.
it's been out of order. So yeah, Groove Life is the name of the company. Zeus was the ring that I did really like, but this new one is called the Edge 3D Eternity. It's got these really cool like markings in it.
Oh, awesome. I have some as well. These are
There you
not
go.
in the place of my wedding band, but these are Calo? That's what
Kalo. So yeah,
yeah.
that was like the first one I tried, and I still
Mhm.
think that's my favorite.
Oh,
These
really?
Groove Lifes have like more intricate designs, but I feel like they're a little less sturdy. Kalo
Mm,
ones I just feel like are like one solid hunk of silicon that like
yeah,
won't get messed up.
sure. Now, mine are a little bit thinner, so I have 2 that I wear
Yeah.
stacked. So I have worn them through where they've actually broken. But again, these are the thin ones.
You should try to reach out for replacements. They like give them away like candy apparently.
That's crazy. Yeah, I'll have
Yeah.
to do that. I have different colors, but I usually just leave the white and the pink on.
Yeah.
So cool.
Um
Your plug.
Plug, I don't know, compressed.fm. Okay, go to the compressed website. We have a whole website. You can listen to the podcasts on there. Um, that's something I feel like we want to improve, and we're open to feedback on. So if you see anything there that either doesn't work or you want to feature, let us know. It's a remix website now, and it's really nice to work in. So
Yeah, that's a good
compressed.fm.
I'm glad you called that out because the backlog is pretty crazy,
Yeah.
just in terms of people that we've interviewed and things like that. So lots of good conversation. Awesome. Well, thanks to everybody for hanging out in the chat. We always enjoy making this a live experience just to get feedback as we're recording. It makes it more fun. So, if you are listening in the future on your podcatcher of choice, please do leave a rating and review. Or even if you're listening live, go leave a rating and review. That just helps the podcast surface and helps more people find it. So, for now, that's all we got. Before we say goodbye, Amalite did I think it was Amalite, yeah, did ask,
Oh yeah.
talking about Next. I did wanna circle back, so this is the post show. But a friend is having issues with images and any tips to improve. Honestly, I think probably the best thing you can do is Cloudinary. They have a super generous free plan. They have tons of options in terms of you just hit their API and then it will deliver the image that you need and optimize it. So you really don't have to do any work on your end. There's also some really cool transformations if you're trying to change the image size on the fly, whether you're using a mobile device or a desktop. I've used Cloudinary for that, where on desktop, I want to return a horizontal image, but on mobile, I want to return a vertical image. And their AI features are smart enough that it will not mess up the image. So if it's a person's head, it's not going to cut the person's head off, which is pretty sweet. And there's also video and audio features within Cloudinary as well. So for example, I did a dev hints video where if you're trying to create a clip, instead of having to create that yourself, you can programmatically create clips out of Cloudinary where you just say, hey, I want 4 seconds of my video, and it'll give it to you. The on compressed, we have audio waveforms. Those become hard to create, and it's not like you want to push that off to the browser. So one of the things that we can do is we can send the wave file over, or the MP3 file over to Cloudinary, and it will return the waveform image. So they handle all the processing on their end, and then we can just cache that and save that into Sanity, which is the CMS that we're using on our end. So big fans of Cloudinary, and Colby, who's one of their DevRels, is just phenomenal. If you have any questions, I'm sure you can reach out to him on Twitter or
I've been
X.
I've been doing video content for Cloudinary on their Dev Hints playlist. I linked it in the chat
Oh,
here.
sweet.
There's a ton of like Here's how you optimize an image in React. Here's how you optimize an image in Node. Here's how you overlay text. And then Jordan was mentioning, isn't Next supposed to optimize images? So they
Yes.
do have an image component. I'm not sure how good it is. At the end of the day, if you want to use Cloudinary, their free tier is incredibly generous. And if you ever move away from Next, well, I guess the image component is separate from Next. Is it
It's just
tied
part
to
of,
it?
I don't know. I've always thought it's built into their framework.
I don't know. That
Yeah,
they may
but
just like take it
that's a
and
good point,
optimize
though.
the quality or something, or maybe like
Yeah, I don't know what they do.
I don't know. Cloudinary does more. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Cloudinary does way more.
The other thing is if you're building a SaaS, they also have upload components to be able to stick images on their server from your application, and they provide the APIs and the SDKs to make that really seamless. Yeah, Jordan, it could be some edge type thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. Whatever it is. The thing that always gets me about the Next image component whenever I've tried to use it is I think they changed this in one of the most recent releases, but for a while you had to enter in the width and the height of the image. And so that was hard to calculate if you're talking about a responsive device. So it's like, oh man, do I put the biggest size possible? So a lot of times I was like, just rather it
I've gotten
give it a
confused about that
regular. Yeah.
before, and I actually came to a realization. They don't want the width and the height currently on the page. They want the intrinsic width and height so that they can calculate aspect ratio.
Oh.
Forever, I was like, how the heck am I supposed to know
Yeah, that's
this?
what I thought.
And then I realized that there's benefits to using width and height over aspect ratio, browser support, right?
Sure.
So that there's no layout shift. And
Yeah.
that's why they want it. They don't want it
Interesting.
for responsiveness. They want it for layout shift
There you
reasons.
go.
And they can
That makes
calculate
sense
aspect
now.
ratio from there. Yeah, that blew my mind when I finally came to that realization. I was
Yeah,
like,
that's
it
smart.
seemed too hard otherwise.
Yes. All right. Well, Jordan and Amylite in particular, thanks for hanging out in the chat. Not that we don't appreciate everybody, but we do appreciate the chatter and the feedback.
Yeah.
So, all right. Hope everybody has a good week, and we'll be back next week talking about something awesome.
See y'all.